Title: 5 Get into Trouble. The Easter holidays had barely begun when Julian, Dick, Anne, and George found themselves longing for an adventure. Timmy, as always, wagged his tail as though he sensed one approaching. The 5 were spending their break cycling across the rolling countryside, enjoying the freedom of the open roads, the warm spring breeze, and the thrill of discovering new places with each passing mile. One sunny morning, as dewdrops still clung to the grass, the children set off with their rucksacks bouncing gently on their backs. The winding lanes led them through villages, meadows, and old stone bridges, until at last they found a perfect spot to stop for lunch, a wide stretch of green field that felt as peaceful as a dream. While they ate, a boy about their age cycled past them, glancing curiously. He slowed to a stop, smiling shyly. His name was Richard Kent, and he seemed polite enough, though a little anxious, as if something troubled him. He told them he had run away from his strict father for a few days of freedom. The 5 felt a wave of sympathy. After all, they understood the longing for space and adventure. They invited him to join them for the afternoon ride, and Richard accepted eagerly. But soon it became clear that Richard was not telling the whole truth. Later that evening, as the group camped in an old barn, strange noises echoed from outside. Timmy growled, his ears pricking sharply. Before they could investigate, 3 rough-looking men appeared, demanding to see Richard. Their voices were harsh, their eyes threatening. Richard's face turned pale. He confessed, shakily, that the men were criminals who believed he was hiding something valuable. Richard had foolishly bragged to them earlier, pretending he knew where a treasure was kept. Now they wanted him to lead them to it. The 5 were furious. They hated lies. But they could also see that Richard was frightened and in danger. They decided to help him, though they warned him sternly not to hide anything from them again. The next morning, before the sun rose, things took a darker turn. The gang returned, this time with a plan, and captured Dick by mistake, thinking he was Richard. They grabbed him while he was out fetching water and vanished before anyone else woke up. When the children discovered what had happened, panic set in. Anne cried softly, George clenched her fists, Julian's face went cold with determination. "Richard," Julian said sharply, "this is your doing. Now you must tell us everything." Richard finally broke down and told the truth about the gang, their hideout, and the stolen documents they wanted him to retrieve. Julian, always the leader, immediately formed a plan. They would follow the gang's trail, find Dick, and put an end to this dangerous mess once and for all. The search led them deep into the countryside, through forests, deserted lanes, and lonely moors, until they found an isolated hilltop mansion known as Owl's Denay. The mansion looked abandoned, but the 5 could sense danger lurking within its stone walls. Timmy sniffed the air and growled. That was enough for them. They knew Dick had to be inside. Gaining entry was no simple task. The place was watched, guarded by more than one criminal. But with Timmy's keen senses and Julian's quick thinking, they managed to slip inside through a broken window at the back. The corridors were dark and dusty, lit only by cracks of sunlight breaking through the roof. Then they heard it, a faint voice. "Julian, is that you?" It was Dick. The children found him locked in a room, shaken but unharmed. Before they could break him out, footsteps approached. The gang had discovered their presence. The 5 children tried to escape quietly, but a loud creak from the wooden floor betrayed them. Within moments, they were surrounded. The criminals marched them to a locked room and shut them inside, believing they would be trapped. But they underestimated the famous 5 and Timmy. The loyal dog squeezed through a gap under the door and sprinted down the hall to find help. The children waited anxiously, whispering ideas, watching the sunlight shift across the dusty floor. Then a commotion, barking, shouting. Timmy had found someone outside. Moments later, the door burst open. A tall, stern man with the unmistakable look of authority entered. Behind him was Timmy, proudly leading the rescue. The man was Mr. Kent, Richard's father, wealthy, authoritative, and deeply worried. Timmy, in his frantic search, had reached a nearby patrol officer who happened to know Mr. Kent was searching for his runaway son. He quickly alerted him, leading them all back to Owl's Denay just in time. The criminals were arrested, the stolen documents recovered, and Richard, after a tearful reunion, apologized sincerely to the five. He admitted he had lied out of foolish pride and fear, but he had learned his lesson. The group rode their bicycles back home the next morning, the spring air fresh and sweet. Richard promised to be truthful and brave in the future, and even thanked the five for saving him. By the time they reached their next campsite, laughter had returned. The nightmare was over, and the calm countryside welcomed them once more. As the sun set behind the golden hills, Julian stretched lazily. "Well," he said with a grin, "I suppose that's another adventure for our holiday." Anne nodded with a soft smile. George patted Timmy proudly. Dick laughed and said, "Let's hope the next one is a little less dangerous." But with the famous five, adventures always followed, unexpected, thrilling, and unforgettable. Please like, share, and subscribe.